That means you've either read it once before or you've read it now. Don't read it too slowly, folks. Just get the gist of what's involved. That's all we're going to need at this point. You won't have time to analyze it completely at this point. Another minute. Get through the facts. Okay. Start by listing the agreements that you found that are worth looking at. Where's the first acceptance?
Between the father and the planner.
How do you know?
You agreed and told her she was hired as between me and Jamie proper.
Yeah, isn't that nasty? So, is there any other acceptance?
Celine offers to Jamie to perform.
Is there any acceptance before that?
The agreements of the new offer or the addition of the singer or showing up.
Just point out the acceptance.
Agreeing to the singer, sure.
When I ask you to, I want to know what you see in that contract, the exact words that you're saying are acceptance.
Sure.
Okay? And that,
Sure, that would be great.
okay. Let's back up and take a look at this. What's the offer that you say you agreed and said she's hired? Give me all of the terms in that offer. Is that it?
All-inclusive package for $5,000. For Jamie to plan the wedding.
Okay. What's the second acceptance for? Any other agreements that are disclosed by the facts?
You mean like for the rest of the story?
Yeah. Any others?
Between Celine and Jamie?
What's that contract say?
The contract stated Celine would appear at the wedding on October 31st and would be paid $1,500 after her appearance.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Any other agreements?
Between Celine and Bill Bothers.
What's that?
Bill Bothers would indicated that he would send a standard form contract to Jamie to be prepared to use as a document. The agent wanted this signed as he received 10% of all the contracts Celine actually signed.
There's agreement there that's sort of disclosed by the fact there isn't clear acceptance, but it's definitely there. You know about it, right? I'm just going to let you know we're not even going to talk about this one, but I am going to. I still want it disclosed. You know, we're not going to deal with it because we don't know. We have no facts, right, about what that was all about. So there's no real way we can analyze it. Anything else?
So after Jamie fell through, I contacted people to get chairs, decorations, and flowers. And I called that anonymous group of people vendor too.
Okay.
We have very little information about them.
Okay. Any others?
Is this count as one or as three?
Which one?
The flowers, decoration, and chairs.
We don't know. Let's presume we contacted one person and delivered them all, okay?
then
It's not really that clear, I don't think. Anything else?
There's kind of an agreement between Jamie and an officiator. That's an agreement.
Okay. That is not the one that's missing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What's the last one?
This whole issue about Kermit.
Is the kind of arrangement between the singer and her cousin, Jamie and Celine?
That's here. Celine and Jamie to appear for $1,500. That one?
Well, the fact that she's been doing it to help her business, or that kind of go together?
It's not part of the contract that I can see. These are the 6 that we're going to deal with. We're going to deal with these 2 principally because they're the important ones for the purpose of understanding. When I deal with these other ones, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. And it's basically, it's a short little test, and it's hard as hell, okay? So the question is, what are these about? And what I'm asking is, there's one central legal rule that you need. In other words, it's about a particular law. And you need to know what that is. Okay? So, once you know what it is, the rest is easy. And these are basically an exercise in understanding that you have to know everything, and then everything fits once it makes sense. There's a problem with this last one, is it doesn't quite fit. But it's close enough that we have to talk about it. Okay? So I'm just going to leave you with that bit for now. We're going to go back up here. All right, so this is the first agreement that we have. And we have to analyze it, determine whether or not that's a contract, right? And we're going to start with, is there intention to create a legal relationship? And I don't want to write this out. It takes a lot longer for me to write these out in these big letters than it does for you to write out. So I don't want to write it all out. I want you to basically record what I say as being the answer, okay? So what's the test?
Are they arm's length or is it commercial?
And the test for arm's length is?
Are they friends or family?
Not friends or family. That's why it's got that stupid not in there. Not friends or family proves arm's length. This is arm's length. We're not close. Right? Not friends or family. And
Is it commercial?
is there money involved? So, are they friends or family? Are you and...
Maybe.
No. How do you know?
Because I saw her ad in the newspaper.
Yeah, it appears that there's nothing to... They've had no contact. You've had no contact with her. You saw an ad in the paper. It appears that you're contacting a stranger. That's a reasonable assumption on the facts. When assumptions are reasonable in the facts, you're allowed to make them. What you can't do is say, well, I want this particular answer, so I'm going to make up this fact and say that does it, because that makes it mean I have to do less work. Right? Be careful with that. I've seen students do that. A reasonable assumption on the facts, though, is that you don't know each other. You're responding to an ad in the paper, which means you're not friends or family, which means you're at arm's length. And it's commercial because there's money involved, because
It's for $5,000.
$5,000 is money. Something like that. So, I expect to see these concepts dealt with properly. Not hard. Consensus. What was offered?
All package for $5,000.
This is where things get a little nasty, don't they? So the offer is an all-inclusive package.
Oh, wait, how do you include the singer in that?
It isn't. We're not here. We're here.
Okay.
Therefore, we don't even talk about the singer because that's not part, that's after. You can't ever have clauses after. You can't. It's going to be that one. We're not there yet. So, yeah.
What about the statement that offers include everything that is obviously meant?
Well, what's that mean? Hold it for a minute. We're not, you're a little ahead of me. What's the test for this? So what was offered?
James offered the services to provide an all-inclusive wedding package for $5,000.
Did you accept that deal?
Yes.
Did you understand the deal the same way?
No.
So were you accepting what she offered? What was she actually offering? Sort of a bare bones thing, right? What were you accepting? A more robust thing? So do we have a lack of consensus here?
Yes, but that's not determined until later.
Yeah. So
This is not a minute.
this gives you an idea of the complexity that, or one of the examples of why contracts can be difficult. We can't really sort this out right now without actually going to the end and finding out what the fight is about. Right? We have to know what the fight's about. What's the fight about?
Decoration, flowers, and chairs.
What?
Chairs.
Anything else?
I would say tables. but-
And the
It
singer.
mentions candles.
Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Good for me. Hi. So, when you know what the fight's about, we have to look for legal rules that are going to address the fight. And when we get back over here, is that ambiguous?
Yes.
Do we have a rule for that?
Yes.
In a written contract.
So we don't. The answer is no, folks. We do not have a rule for that. Right? Because
It's not written.
ambiguity in a written contract applies to ambiguity in a...
Written contract.
Is this a written contract? No. So sometimes people will stumble upon that and throw it in, and that wouldn't be right. I'm going to go back to you because I cut you off on purpose. What else did you say?
Everything in the offer is what's stated and what is obviously meant.
How many of you have ever been to a wedding before? Okay. And how many of you then have gone on to the divorce? No, just All right, so here's the fight, folks. This is really what the fight's about. And the question that we have to ask is, if someone was to offer an all-inclusive package, how many of you would say, obviously, there's going to have to be decorations? How many? Put up your hands if you'd say, obviously, there's decorations in all-inclusive package. See, when we get that type of response, this becomes part of that because it's what's stated plus what's obviously meant. The problem is, you're going to see this in a minute, how many of you would say, and be careful with this, obviously an all-inclusive wedding package would include flowers? Okay. How many of you would say that's not obvious? We have different, it's usually guys. Okay. What? I know, that's what I say, it's usually guys. That's why I'm surprised at that. Right? And there were guys that said obviously. So there's a tendency on women to see that flowers are obviously part of a wedding. But it depends a lot on your culture, your background, your experience. There isn't a right answer to this one. There's a right question. So how many of you would say, obviously, it includes flowers? Obviously. All-inclusive includes flowers. You will come to the conclusion that this is part of it. You will not. And that's fine. It's not right or wrong. The question's right or wrong. Is it obvious? How many of you say, obviously, there'd be chairs? How many of you say, obviously, at an all-inclusive package, there will be candles? No one. This is not part of the deal. But the other ones, at least these two, definitely are.
So you mean the court's going to impose that meaning?
On both sides and say they both agreed to it. And now when we ask, is there consensus? Did both sides agree to an all-inclusive package with decoration chairs and for some of you flowers? You're going to say, yes, it gets imposed. You both agreed to it because it's what's obviously meant. And it doesn't matter what either side thought. It doesn't matter. The question is, what would people say it obviously means? That becomes the meaning. I want to go back to the example I gave you. If I said, I'll sell you this chalk for $1, and you said yes, and I'm thinking a Spanish dollar, and you're thinking a East Indian dollar, which of us is right? None of us. Because you would say it's a, and that becomes what the court will say you meant and I meant, and we both agreed to it. That's how obviously works. It creates obligations and meaning to these things that gets imposed on both sides. And then when we say, since the court said you meant it and I meant it, is what we meant the same? Is it? Yes. That creates consensus. So that's, in my view, the proper way to deal with that issue. And it's a tough one because you have a fight. How do you deal with it? There's a legal rule that's going to come along and fix it in here. I don't really care where you deal with it, but it probably should be dealt with here. And this goes back to the question that where does this go? Well, does it go over here with breach or does it go over here with consensus? I think this is the best place to deal with it. At some point you must. Okay? Because it resolves the dispute. Consideration. What is she giving? What are you giving? Are you both giving something that you do not already have or have the right to? Okay, so we got consideration. Legality. What's the test? What's the first test? Do you have to break the law? Does either side have to break the law to provide an all-inclusive wedding package for $5,000? No. That's the obligation. Right? And I know I'm twisting things a bit, but I do want to make this point. What if it were your wedding? Would there be a requirement that you get married? Well, if you're having a wedding, you're getting married, right? If you're buying something, you own it. That's how you get into trouble with not staying exactly on the obligations. The obligation is to provide an all-inclusive wedding package and to give $5,000. They're both giving something they don't have the right to. Legality is no one has to break the law to pay $5,000 for an all-inclusive wedding package. There's no laws being broken or have to be broken, right? That's actually not are being broken. It's have to be broken. And what's the other one? Does it limit a person's ability to earn a living? No, it actually helps Jamie earn a living. It doesn't limit anybody, right? Got it? So is this a contract?
Yes.
How's it end? Oh, now, do you have any flaws? Are there any misrepresentations? What? It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing you got wrong there. Okay,
What'd she say?
she said all-inclusive. Do you know why that's not a good answer?
It's not specified, and it could lead someone to misrepresentation.
What do we know about misrepresentations, folks?
It's
Not clear inside the contract.
Can't be in the offer. Misrepresentations can't be in the offer.
But if you don't know what is it, what is it?
Then it's breach. But it can't be a misrepresentation. Misrepresentations cannot be in the offer. If it's in the offer and it's false, it's breach. Misrepresentations have to be outside of the offer. Are there any? Any false information outside the offer?
No.
No.
Like, you asked her if it's an all-inclusive package, and she said yes.
If what?
Like, I asked if it was an all-inclusive package, and she said yes.
But that's in the offer. Right? Okay, let me show you something here, because I know misrepresentations can cause this type of confusion at this point in time. There are two statements that could have been a misrepresentation, but there's no facts to say they are. What are they?
Hundreds of satisfied customers.
If this is your first wedding, that would be a false statement. It's not part of the deal. It's not like you say, I'll buy it for 100,000. I'm going to buy an all-inclusive package, and you have 100, because that's not an obligation. That's what they look like. Okay? So, and what's the other one?
That's the rate in town.
That has trouble being factual, but if it were, that would be. So, those are the types of things. They're not part of the deal. It doesn't say in here, and you'll give me the best rate in town. It's something that is false that induces you to enter the contract. Do you see that now? Do you see why all-inclusive isn't? And this is why it's so important to write this out and get your offer right here. Because if it's a misrepresentation, it will not be in this square. It can't be. And that is both what is stated and what's obviously meant. And they're the interpretation rules for written. It can't be in here. Misrepresentations are always outside of the deal. Got it? So I don't think there's any misrepresentations, because I don't think there's anything that's a false statement that's inside or outside the deal that we know is false and induce her to enter the contract. If this were her first wedding, she couldn't have hundreds of satisfied customers. That would be false. It would probably be material. People normally care about that, and I'd have to give you a little bit more information about inducing contract. All right, so we got misrepresentation. What's the next one you want to deal with? Duress? Anyone forced into this contract? During threats? No. Capacity? Drunk, insane, or a minor? Are you drunk, insane, or a minor? Is she? No facts to support that. That's another thing. There's no facts to suggest it. Then the conclusion you should probably draw is that they're not, right? All right. If I want you to come to the conclusion someone's a minor, I'm going to give you their birth date or something that indicates how old they are. Okay. Are we all done? What else we got?
Undue influence.
Undue influence. Are you in one of the relationships?
No.
5 relationships? No.
Non-obstruction.
Did you sign something? Think it was something else? How do you know?
There's no written contract.
Yeah, it was on the phone. No way you could have signed. So do we have any flaws?
No clause.
Was this contract, as you have determined it, performed? Did you get decorations and chairs and for some of you flowers?
No.
Was it performed? No. Was it discharged by other means? Was it? Frustration? Novation? Determine the contract? Law? How many of you say no?
Oh, novation maybe.
Don't we have to determine if this is a contract? Oh, yeah. Rat bastard Murray. We actually can't finish this. We actually can't finish case study number 1 because is there a second agreement that if it's a contract would end the first one?
Yes.
Is there one?
Maybe.
Is that an agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
If that's a contract, what happens to this one?
Novation.
So we can't deal with by other means, discharged by other means, until we determine if that's a contract. Because we need to know. So now we have to stop what we're doing. Because we can't.
So even though the first part was performed, we have to stop and go.
It wasn't performed. Because this is the contract. We need to know, is it breached? Are we getting to here, or is it ending here? It definitely wasn't performed.
Right.
Right? So we can't actually finish this nasty little thing until we go back and deal with this. So we have to stop and deal with this before we can finish number 1. Because there's a possibility of a novation. Do you see that? If this is a contract, it ends this by novation, and this will end right here. If it's not a contract, we're going to go on to breach. So we got to figure it out. So let's deal with this one. Is there an intention to create legal relationship? Are you at arm's length and is it commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there consensus? What was offered?
An all-inclusive package plus Celine Dijon.
And it will be interpreted to mean what's obviously meant, like we did before. When you said, sure, that'd be great, were you accepting the offer that was being made for an all-inclusive package as interpreted by the courts as being what's obviously meant? And Celine, were you accepting the deal that she was making, the offer she was making?
Yeah.
Yes. Is there consideration? What is she giving?
Service.
The original all-inclusive package plus the meat.
Okay. What are you giving?
$5,000.
$5,000.
Ooh.
Oh no, you've already.
Now, let's ask the question. Did you already have the right? Is she giving this?
Yes.
And are you giving this?
Yes.
Did you already have the right to an all-inclusive package plus Celine? This is yes or no?
No.
So is she giving you something that you did not already have or have the right to?
Yes.
What are you giving?
The same amount.
What are you giving, folks? Does she already have the right to $5,000?
Yes.
Because this is a,
Contract.
and therefore this is,
No.
say it, it's
Not a contract.
Past consideration.
past consideration, and therefore it's no good, and therefore this cannot be a contract. Right? Because it has no consideration. Because she already had the right to $5,000. You cannot give that again. And that's because this gave this already. So if we ask the question, are you both giving something you did not already have or have the right to? The answer is, she is, but you're not. And therefore, this agreement has no consideration, which means it's not a contract, which means we can now go over and finish this off. Was there a new contract that ended the first one?
No.
No. Okay? Because it has to be a contract. Second question, was there a term in the contract that ends it?
No.
Was there a law that ends it?
No.
Was it frustrated, impossible to perform through no fault of either side?
No.
No. Doesn't mean hard, doesn't mean expensive, it means impossible.
Through no fault of Jamie or myself.
Right.
So, I mean, could it be frustration?
No.
But
No.
it was ultimately Celine's fault it wasn't performed.
No.
We're not dealing with that
Oh,
thing.
yeah, my bad.
Okay? Okay, so I need to use you as a bit of an example here, folks. You got to be careful about not jumping contracts. when it came to torts, especially with negligence, people would start with one negligence and then they'd end up with another one, right? This is one of the reasons why it's so important to stay absolutely focused on what you're doing and keep following it through. So don't jump contracts. Got it? So, it wasn't, and therefore it was a breach of the first contract, the one we're looking at still.
Yes.
Because you didn't get this. Was there loss?
Yes.
How much? Depends on how you look at it. I can't remember if I tell you in the facts. Have you paid her or not?
Didn't say.
It didn't say?
Says the only people you paid so far are the additional people you've hired.
Okay, so you haven't paid her.
So you're at
What's your loss?
$6,000.
No. Put you back in the same position you would have been in if the contract had been performed. If the contract had been performed, you would have been paying for an all-inclusive package. Now you're getting it, but it cost you $6,000, presuming you're not paying Jamie. What's your loss? What type of damages or remedy would you get? Would you get specific performance? What would you get? No. What type of remedy would you get? What's it called, folks? That was earlier tonight. What? Damages. Yeah, that's the right answer. I can't hear you. That's why I keep asking. Did I say you were wrong?
Well, you kept asking questions.
I didn't say they were wrong. I just didn't hear them. Okay. So, this was a contract and it was breached, entitling you to sue for $1,000. If there was a remedy, if there was a flaw, would you use it?
No,
Why not?
because it gets you out of the contract with her in the first place, and then you're out of everything.
I'm going to rephrase what you said, Josh. You're thinking right. The answer's great. I love it. However, I need to rephrase in case people didn't follow the bouncing ball like I did. If you cancel it, you have no deal. And if you have no deal, you cannot
Yeah,
sue.
breach.
Right? So if there was a flaw, you would not use that flaw because you want to be able to sue for your loss. Right?
Right.
So that's kind of a little thing. Okay, let's...
And it's only the one side that can use the flaw, right?
That's right. Had enough? Okay, that's fair. All right. So, let's deal with these other two. What's that about? They appear. There's one principal thing that we talked about that I believe that is meant to raise. What is it?
Ambiguity in contract.
Is it ambiguous?
Yes.
Can appear mean more than one thing?
Yes.
So what happens?
The court makes a decision, and
On the basis of what? How do they make that decision? There's an answer. You should know it. What happens if something's ambiguous?
What is obviously meant.
What?
What is
No,
obviously-
can't be obvious. It has two meanings. Which one's the right one?
What was expected of the person who accepted the offer?
No, it's not. It has to do with acceptance.
It would favor the one who didn't break the contract?
Yeah.
I'm going to rephrase that. Whoever wrote the contract loses. Who wrote it?
that's actually ambiguous too.
No, it ain't.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't.
The agent wrote the contract,
And the agent is an agent for
or still in.
making a contract for her. He's the agent. Therefore, Celine,
Will have to meet the obligations
that who felt they were?
that the father felt they were.
It's Jamie. This is contract between Jamie and Celine to appear. So Bill created the document, didn't he?
No,
Who created it?
it doesn't say.
Yeah, Bill, the agent.
Send a standard form contract to Jamie that had been prepared and was used to document contracts that were actually signed. It has been prepared. It does not say that Bill wrote it.
Okay,
Assuming the agent.
that's fair. Bill wrote it.
Okay. I mean, I had to work on that reasonable assumption, but it's not explicit.
You're right. Yeah, and it's the same thing I just did about the idea you got to stay focused on what you're supposed to do. So it's the same thing. Is that bad fact? Okay, Bill wrote it. So if Bill wrote it, then it's Celine's document because he's her agent, right?
Yeah.
And therefore she will lose, and the interpretation of Jamie will be applied. What did Jamie feel appear meant?
Well, it's different because there's two statements.
What did
Jamie, there's an issue though.
there is?
Jamie-
Okay, well wait a minute, stop. Did Celine appear?
Yes.
Yes.
So then there's no breach.
Jamie kept using the
There
word
is,
sing.
Celine is a singer, so one to express herself.
And whose interpretation would that be?
A normal person.
Yes. And that would be Jamie's, right? So the only way there will be a dispute is if Jamie is saying, you're supposed to sing, and Celine says, no, it just says appear.
Right.
And that dispute will be resolved against Celine, right?
Right.
But because this isn't a contract, is Jamie out anything when Celine doesn't sing? She has no obligation to provide her. And therefore, there's no loss. Right?
Right.
So this is meant to have you understand this is ambiguous and it's a written contract, and that's the rule that would be used. But it's kind of nasty because you've got to follow it all the way through, which is, although it wouldn't be you, it would be you. Go ahead.
Okay, but like that's between like us and the planner, that agreement. Whereas like the next agreement is between Celine and Jamie.
It is, but why is Jamie getting Celine to sing?
For the wedding.
To comply with this agreement,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
So when this isn't a contract, Jamie doesn't have to provide Celine. So Jamie isn't out anything,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Got it? And therefore, although there's a breach, there's no loss. What's Kermit about? This one's tough. I'll give you a little hint here. The reason it's tough is it's not quite there. You can't put your hand in all the fingers and they fit and the glove is perfect. Yeah, two of them are kind of, you're not sure if that's fitting or not. There are three things that need to be in place. Two of them are clearly there. One of them is maybe there and maybe not there. It's not absolutely clear on the facts. What is the issue?
Accepted frustration.
Nope.
Not consideration.
No.
Like they didn't really accept it. It just says that he offered to stay.
They let him.
He doesn't have to be there.
No.
There's no subcontract?
Is this a subcontract?
No.
Thank you.
Well, I feel like the facts like wanted to bait that. You know what I mean?
I know. That's not. Is there a subcontract? Did somebody hire and then they hired Kermit? Did that happen? No. Doesn't fit. Doesn't even come. It's a tenth. It's. I understand why you would think that, but when he's trying to make it fit, there's nothing there to make it fit. It doesn't work. The problem is that the issue that this is asking you to deal with is only partly there. There's three triggers. Two of them are there for sure. The third one might or might not. It's a pivot. So you only get 2.5, which makes it harder to see. What is it?
Does it have something to do that Celine invited him to spend the rest of the day with him?
No.
No.
Frustration.
No. What? There's no frustration.
It's impossible for Celine to perform by no fault of her own.
No. She could have still performed, but she didn't even have to perform because that wasn't.
Did they assign it?
No.
Offered to see.
I don't even understand, like, when I try to look at a contract, there's no contract.
No.
There's no money.
It's not an invitation to trade, it's not,
You keep dancing around it.
it's not a unilateral contract.
No.
There was no offer.
No.
with them?
Oh, Quantum Merriwood,
Is singing a service?
yes,
Was there no price discussed?
yes.
What's the third one?
Yeah, expectation payment.
Is Kermit a singer?
No.
What the frick, you guys? Okay, homework, young lady. YouTube Rainbow Connection. You don't really have to do that, but you should. It's very nice. Is Kermit a singer, folks? Haven't you seen him with his little banjo in the swamp? I should. If I had more time, folks, I would make you watch that. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, but there's Kermit the Frog, not Kermit the Frog.
That was just a copyright requirement that I had to put in here. All right, so based on the idea that Kermit is a singer, what do you expect to get paid for what he does? That's not clear on the facts. But what is clear is there's a service, right? And there's no price discussed. Whether or not he could claim for that service is going to pivot on, is there a reasonable expectation of payment? That's not clear on the facts.
But you said generously offered to sing.
Yeah, but not for nothing.
You felt
Generously means
the
nothing.
facts aren't clear.
They're not. They're deliberately not clear. Because I need you to understand, and let make sure you understand something, folks. I'm trying to teach you how to look at case studies. This would not be a fair exam question because it doesn't fit. Fair exam questions are, there's enough there that you can actually know what you're dealing with. But what I want you to understand is, this could fit into Quantum Merriwood with the slightest addition of a tiniest of facts. We have 2 out of 3. That's enough to look at. That's enough. Go ahead.
This has to do with the one between Celine and Jamie. Where does the condition that Celine, where do we coming in out of this? When Celine said, if I am free, I'll do this.
Was she free?
Yes.
So that's a conditional acceptance where the condition is met, which makes it acceptance. Got it?
But if she didn't show up,
Well, then, but was she free?
She was free and there was a contract signed by both of them, so
Yeah.
therefore she was available.
Yeah. So there's a verbal thing, and it turns out that she was there. There could be some issues with respect to that. Don't get too hung up on it right now. It's a small sub-point. It's not necessarily a bad point. There's some issues that could be raised there. All right. So, there's, in the last couple of minutes, I just want to make a point that's so important, okay? I give you these case studies because they're hard. Giving you easy case studies, you know what? How would you feel if I gave you a bunch of easy case studies and then the exam was considerably harder? Would that be fair?
No.
No, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. So I try and do the opposite. I basically increase the difficulty of the case studies. This one is actually quite hard, but it's hard because you've never done it before, right? That's why it's hard. If you had to do a similar case study again, I expect that you could probably do it fairly easily, right? You can walk your way through. So the last case study that I want you to do for next week, we're not going to do it tonight, eh? Just check it. That I want you to do for next week is quite challenging. There's some twists to it. It's not easy, and you might not get it right. You might blow it all to hell. The problem with that is it makes you feel like you don't know what you're doing, and you probably do. So don't let these case studies cause you to lose confidence, but do learn the material well enough that you don't get tripped. Contracts exam is harder. You need to know your stuff. It's easy if you know your stuff, but if you only partly know it, you can make a lot of mistakes. Okay, see you next week. Plenty more fun.